Could you quickly just tell us about yourself? What made you want to do this podcast? And you had a few topics that you wanted to talk about, especially about the work ethic of people back in the day versus now. So just give us an intro about yourself.
Yeah, so quick introduction. I've spent about probably um close to a quarter of a century now working in the tech and in the HR space. So 24 years of dinosaurian experience, but it's been a roller coaster ride. Being in tech or with the tech industry, of course, in the people business, but in the tech industry through and through. So I call myself a quasi tech guy. I don't know how to code, but I understand what's going on in the tech space, and I can fairly kind of relate to the tech talk that's pretty much happening around. So work's kind of taken me to a lot of places, a lot of cities within India, outside of India as well. So a good exposure to what works across different geographies with different sets of people, different diversities, different cultures. So yeah, I mean, over the last 24 years that I have worked, it's been a fairly comprehensive, sort of experience when I look back. I enjoy dealing with people, and that's the reason why I am into HR, and I shall continue to be in HR till the industry basically throws me out one fine day. But yeah, I mean that's really how it is. I was born in Ranchi. I am a Bihari. That makes me a Bihari. Born in Ranchi. Did my formative schooling in Ranchi. 10th and 12th from Ranchi, and then of course I came to Mumbai. I landed in Mumbai in '94. It's been, I think, more than 30 years now that I've been in Mumbai. So I am a Mumbaikar, and yeah, so that's really how it is.
And you mentioned you were into tech recruitment. So one question I just came up with right now is there's all this hype about tech, there's all this hype about like IIT, this and that. There's a lot of engineers coming out every single year. So despite all this supply of people that are tech, do you feel there is a talent shortage still, like in what you are hiring?
Yeah, there is a shortage of good talent. I mean, there's no shortage of talent. Talent's available everywhere, right? I mean, you advertise a job and you'll have maybe about 500 people at any given point in time applying for that particular job, maybe more, right? So there's no dearth of talent. The problem is we don't get the talent that we would want. And that pretty much goes back to our whole culture thing and the education, academic school system. You know how kids are conditioned, during their formative years. I mean, even today you have every family wanting their kids to be either an engineer or maybe a doctor, right? I mean, um, as a result of which you have so many engineering institutions that have now mushroomed. I was reading somewhere that on an average every year you have more than, I think, about 8 lakh or 9 lakh students coming out of engineering colleges. Now that's a lot of supply.
There's not that many job openings.
Yeah, 900,000 fresh openings for engineers in India. No ways. It's just not there, right? And I go to a lot of campuses, and I largely go to various, sort of, um, quality of campuses, right? I mean, I go to tier one campuses, I go to tier two campuses, sometimes I go to the tier three campuses as well. And it's always good to kind of interact with students across all of these engineering colleges. And I can tell you that um, I mean, there's just not enough people that will make the cut with good tech companies that are looking at smart people. I mean, either they fail miserably in their communication or they fail miserably in their whole academic assimilation. But clearly, I mean, while they have a degree, what is really required by engineering, by tech companies or even by companies for that matter, is not what is basically seen in a lot of campuses today. And that's the reason why today you have a lot of engineers who take up BPO jobs, who take up contact center jobs. You'll see a lot of engineers, right, out there. And that pretty much sums up the state of affairs, when it comes to you pursuing engineering today. In any case, 800,000, fresh engineers coming out. You'll probably have, I'm guessing, maybe about 1,000 or maybe about 2,000, 3,000 good software jobs, right? So it's
Wait, so would you hire somebody, let's say he like does not have a degree, but he has the skill sets. Would you as a company, are you starting to make that shift where you're purely looking at the skills?
yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, largely, most of the organizations still do not, kind of disown degrees. When you
No,
have
it's
to,
not about disowning. It's rather to uh, they know that degree is not necessarily the metric for qualifying the put like the right kind of candidate. So
not entirely, Shrey. I mean, most of the large tech companies. I mean, if you take a look at the top 50 tech companies in India today, right? Where are they hiring the talent? They're hiring talent. So you have two, three ways of hiring, right? You have on campus, you have off campus, you have laterals, right? Now, on campus would mean these companies actually go to campuses. So, they would go to maybe 50, 70 campuses all across India. Off campus would mean, all right, I'm not wanting to go to a campus, but I'll invite students to come to my company by placing an advertisement. So there could be maybe a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day kind of a job fair within the campus. I mean, within the company's campus, right? Within the company, company premises. And the third would be, well, I don't need freshers, so I'll ask for experienced people. So all of that is the lateral hiring, right? Um, if you take a look at the top 50 tech companies that are hiring today, all of them go to campuses today, right? And the reason why they go to all these engineering campuses is because the engineering degree that you have, kind of still is very valuable, and it is still part of the whole design of hiring, right? Um, at the same time, when you talk to people, when you talk to HR folks, when you talk to the tech heads today, they would definitely tell you that, well, it's not the degree that matters. We're looking for great smart people who can code. So even if you don't have a degree, if you're a dropout, we'll be willing to kind of look at you and talk to you. But it's often a lip service. I mean, I still see that to be a lip service. Though of course, I think the intent is there, but the system is such that to break the whole system, and to bring about that whole transformational change around hiring will still take a little bit of time.
yeah, because it's like part of as the company grows larger, you need to systemize your processes. You can't just be randomly hiring.
Have to put a method to the madness, right? I mean, how else do you? I mean, today, if you have, let's say, an engineering graduate who comes to you and you're the manager, right? And he says, you know what, I spent 4 years, right? I mean, in a engineering college, I did my BTech in computer science, and I come to your office or to your organization at a 4 lakh, 5 lakh salary, and I see that the guy sitting next to me is not an engineering graduate at the same salary. What's the premium that I command, right? And how do you kind of really answer these conversations, or how do you make these conversations, right? How do you logically conclude these conversations? So companies are still not very ready for these conversations, but I think the intent is there, right? I mean, to kind of look at or go beyond academic pedigree and really look at those smart coders, right? Also, I think this whole thing is going to break only when India starts looking at some very serious tech work, right? I mean, largely over the last 20, 25, 30 years, um, a lot of work that has been done by Indian tech companies have been the low quality, you know,
Entry
the
level
work
stuff.
that gets dumped into India. Okay, so a lot of maintenance work, a lot of service. Product engineering per se, is not something that India is known for. Okay, I mean, tell me one great Indian product that you know.
That
Um,
isn't copied from a foreign product.
it will really, you will really take a lot of time to actually think about the three great Indian products, that have been conceived, conceptualized, made in India, and they're doing excellent, right, all across the world. So we've never been known for our product capabilities. Now, of course, it's changing with so many application companies coming up and startups and unicorns, and there's a lot of tech work happening. I'm not, you know, I'm not I'm not for a moment saying that we are not changing, but until now, right? I mean, most of the tech work is largely maintenance, product maintenance. It's not product development. It's a lot of tech customer support. It's a lot of implementation. It's a lot of work that is being done by teams that are, I would say, based out of India, maybe in the US or other geographies. But the implementation and the delivery is happening from India, but the front ending is happening from those teams. So, I mean, largely, the Indian tech talent is still into a lot of services and maintenance, and product development is not so much prevalent, but it's changing now. I mean, a lot of new companies are coming up. So, I think that whole thing of hiring a lot of dropouts from colleges and looking at people who are excellent coders. You don't necessarily need a degree to be calling yourself a great coder. I mean, all of those things are changing. Those are happening, but largely I would say tech companies and the industry, the system as such, is still kind of favoring academic pursuits.
Understood.
So you said out of 800,000 fresh graduates per year, there is around 2 to 3,000 job openings for that, correct?
No, you will obviously have more. I mean, I was reading TCS's, the top 4 or 5, the IT bellwethers, right? You talk about the Infosys's and you talk about TCS's, the Cognizants of the world, the Tech Mahindras. I mean, largely the top 10 tech companies that come to mind, Wipro. Each of these companies typically hire about, let's say, about 15, 20,000 people, right? Now that's about, let's say, 20,000 into, let's say, 10 companies, right? That's about 200,000. Now the balance, 30, 40, 50 tech companies, the tier 2 companies will hire about, let's say, 5,000 on an average, right? That's another, let's say, about 2.5 lakhs, right? So, I mean, you will typically have maybe 400,000 new jobs, okay, coming up. Or entry level jobs coming up year on year, but that's also like a stretch, okay. But then again, you have like much more than that, engineering graduates coming out of different engineering colleges. Do you know how many engineering colleges are there in Bombay alone?
I don't know. I don't go to college.
You have more than 20 engineering colleges in Bombay alone. Right? In Pune, Shrey, where you're sitting out of today, you will have at least 25 engineering colleges, right? So only Bombay and Pune, would be about, let's say, 40, 45 engineering colleges. Each of those colleges every year will be churning out about, let's say, 500 to 600 engineering graduates. You can do your math.
Okay, now what are the complaints of these graduates then? Let's say even if they are skilled and let's say they are joining your company, for example, they meet all the qualifications on paper, they meet the qualifications. What are some of the soft skill part of things that you found a challenge with or seen with the fresh people?
Yeah, it is an issue. It's an issue, but it's a solvable issue, right? I mean, it's not something that cannot be solved. Some of the greatest tech talent that I have come across, were pretty pathetic in their communication, and then they went to the US, and then suddenly everything changed over a period of 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, these are the same people. So I think it's quite solvable if you give them the right learning opportunities, and if there is that whole gumption to be sitting in front of a customer and
But if you are an HR and you need to make a hiring decision, you want the person to meet all the metrics. Why would you give a chance to a pathetic person?
No, okay. So you do, because you don't hire them predominantly for communication. You hire them to code, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
But ideally, you'd want somebody that can code and also speak.
Correct. Now, what happens is that you start, because you're a software engineer, right? So you start with coding, right? And you will do a lot of tech work, okay? Which may not involve a lot of front-ending with customers, front-ending with stakeholders. It could be, a typical sort of, sit back, code, deliver. That's about it, right? But as you grow, right? As your role basically progresses, you cannot be a software engineer for the rest of your life, right? I mean, you would also want to basically grow. You would also say, hey, listen, can I sit in front of the customer? I want to know customer problems now. I know how to code, but can I understand what's going on? I mean, how do these customer conversations happen? Can I be part of those? Can I understand customer escalations? Can I understand what makes a customer happy? What essentially means? Or can I start participating in bids, in tenders? Can I start kind of answering proposals? Can I start working on, requests for, proposals? Or can I do a little bit of pre-sales now? I know a lot of tech. I also understand what the customer wants. Now, can I become like a bridge between what customer wants, what we can deliver, and in between, if there's any communication that needs to happen with the customer, can I kind of bridge all of that? Okay, that's essentially the pre-sales. Now, for all of this, right, you don't necessarily need tech capabilities anymore. You don't need coding capabilities anymore, right? You need a lot of talk capabilities. You need a lot of negotiation capabilities. You need a lot of teaching, tailoring, taking control of conversations, right, with customers. Now, all of those things, are basically, I would say, those competencies that eventually, push you to being a program manager, to being an account manager, to being, a client partner, to kind of being a pre-sales consultant, where you can sit and where you can talk, where you can influence customers, right? If you cannot talk, you cannot influence customers, right?
Yeah.
So, but when you join, right, when you join essentially to be part of the tech workforce, right? So it's coding, and that's what most of the organizations will assess your capabilities in and around. But as you grow, you'll have some outliers who'll be excellent, and then those guys will eventually end up growing. Even you would want such people to be, front-ending with customers, right? You don't want, someone who's a dumb fuck, right, and who's basically sitting in front of a customer. Sorry about my French, but I mean, you just wouldn't want that, right? Because the customer's going to eat you alive, right? And you will really get, the customer can break your confidence, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you are not in India, you're in a different place, where the sensibilities are different, the way of talking is different. If you're not able to kind of really blend in, with the kind of conversation, like if you're going to the UK, if you have a customer in the UK and you're not talking football in the UK, then you can't make conversation. The customer will not like you.
Understood.
Similarly, if you're in the US and if you don't talk rock and roll and blues, I mean, you'll not. I mean, these are things that a lot of these initial talent that comes into the organization will also have. Some of them will have it, and then these are the people who end up, basically, growing, right? So, but these are solvable issues. I mean, these are not unsolvable issues.
It seems like a lot of personal motivation also needs to be there. Also, it's the company's responsibility in some way to make sure that there is scope for growth for whoever, all these entry level positions and all those other things. Uh, I want to talk about something that we spoke on our first call that we had like a few days ago, and you were concerned about how your generation works or worked when they were young versus how the current generation is working. What do you have to say on that?
No, I don't have a concern. I'm saying every generation had its own unique way of addressing work, right? And behaviors around work. And by that logic, I think the working class has undergone different transformational stages, through the decades. The way our parents used to work, my parents used to work, would be very different from the way your parents would have worked. The way I work or my generation works is very different from the generation that is basically getting hired today to work. And similarly, I have a 14-year-old at home, and when he picks up work, which is maybe in the next 5-7 years or 8 years or 10 years, I think the way he would look at work would be very, very different. So, and I think all of it is, there's nothing right or wrong in it, but I think it's very different, okay? And it often makes you wonder as to what really would have brought in these changes, right? These behavioral
But
changes.
what do you see exactly as an HR? What do you see?
For example, I think my generation never worked for validation. It always worked because it really enjoyed work, right? I mean, we're generally a very, very mehnati, don't take leaves, we don't take leaves. Even if we have a vacation, we'll make sure that our Google Meet is on and we attend all our meetings, and at least, and I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that is the work ethic. Okay. I don't recollect a single vacation in the last 25 years where my phone would not have been available for office calls, and I have been getting office calls every damn vacation of mine, and I have been spending at least 10 to 15% of my vacation time addressing those escalations, being part of those meetings despite being on vacation, whether it is a vacation inbound or whether it's a vacation that is out of India. But I have always been available. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I think those are some of the sensibilities that are associated with my generation, largely. If you take a look at today's generation, right, that comes,
Do they just switch off their phone? Is that what you've seen?
they will turn off their phone. They'll okay, which is fine. I mean, that's okay, right? But it just takes a little bit of time to assimilate that, right? I mean, we often wonder that, hey, dude, if I have to reach you, how do I reach you, right? And they say you don't have to reach out to me. I mean, this is my PTO, right? You technically don't have to reach out to me. So sometimes you wonder, right? I mean, and it's okay. I mean, it's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. But
See, it's okay. It's okay, but I mean, how would I like if you were to from a company's perspective as a business owner or as an HR or senior management, I would love to see somebody even on vacation they're working. Obviously, that's the trade-off. Like you will make faster progress in your career if your phone is on essentially.
yeah, you see, I mean, the point is very simple. I mean, the rationale is very simple. My customer is working, right? And if my customer is working, and if my customer has a problem, my customer will reach out to me, right? And when he reaches out to me, who solves that problem? I cannot say that, listen, the guy is having beer, on a nice, sandy beach in Goa. So listen, customer, fuck off. The customer will not listen to that. right? So that's the rationale, right? Now, to what extent does the rationale really sit, with today's generation is up to them, right?
But what is it that they care about? Like for example, your generation had the motivation of work ethic, making money, this and that. It seems like the motivation for money is not there, because the rational human would.
So I think the other thing that I have also realized is that for today's generation, right? I mean, for people like you, or for, let's say, my son who's 14 today, and let's say by the time he reaches 24, right? Largely the three big things that we used to work for, right, which is roti, kapda, or makan, that would have already been taken care of for them. They don't work for roti, kapda, or makan. That their parents have already figured out for them, right? And we used to work for that. My first purchase was a house, right? But today's kids, their first purchase is not a house. They would live on rent, right? And if ever there's a problem, all they need to do is just call up their parents and say, "Hey, Dad, I'm having a bad time. Can I come and just plonk over myself at your place?" Most welcome, right? So I think largely that roti, kapda, makan, which really makes or made our ass, we literally slogged our asses off for it, right? That is not there anymore, right? Today's generation is very light. Okay, they're asset light. You don't need a car. You have Uber, you have Ola, you have Blue Smart, you have whatnot.
Is it because they can't afford it, or is it a choice?
No, but it's a very big commitment, right? So they're generally commitment phobic or commitment light. Okay. So why do you want to buy a 1 crore apartment or a 1.5 crore apartment? You don't need to block in your money, right?
Correct.
And you believe in experiences. You don't believe in assets, right? So you might as well use that money to go and have your vacation, which is fine. So, but I'm saying that roti, kapda, makan is being largely taken care of. Okay. You always have a good support system to back you up, in today's times. The only thing that they need is validation. Now, validation can be very dangerous, okay? Because, sometimes you may not get validated, sometimes you will get validated, sometimes you want to get validated for something, but you don't. Sometimes you want to get validated in a specific manner, okay? Now, those things can get a little, I would say, touchy and tricky. So today's generation basically works for validation.
What do you mean by validation? Could you give an example?
Validation means you did a great job, dude. I mean, I am here, and that whole instant gratification is required. We never worked for instant gratification because we were not conditioned for it. Okay. But today's kids want that instant gratification, and that's the reason why you are more worried for your likes, right? How many likes have I gotten on a post? And if I don't get those likes, I get depressed, right? I really get depressed, right? On my Insta feed, I have only 100 friends. I am not depressed. But if my son has got 100 friends, he'll be super depressed. He'll be like, man, I mean, what's going on? Nobody likes me. Nobody loves me anymore. But we never had those problems, right? So I think that whole instant gratification of people, of people validating everything that you're doing, that hey, it's good and great, thumbs up and all those emojis. I think that, and I don't know what explains it. Maybe it's a tech advancement, or I'm not too sure.
Would you call it thin-skinned?
I don't know.
Let's say this new generation kid versus your generation at the same age were given the same problem. Who would handle it better?
No, I think I think would have probably, I would say we could have handled it slightly better. But okay, but that's not to say that today's kids are not smart.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. Yeah.
They are extremely smart, and I think the way they come up with their reasoning, right? Sometimes will make you wonder that, oops, ऐसा तो मैंने भी नहीं सोचा था, right? I mean, so I think they are pretty reasonable that ways. But yeah, you're right, Shrey. I mean, they're thin-skinned. I think the sensibilities are very. They're very sensitive. They're very touchy. and which is the reason why today there's so much of focus on mental well-being also. You have a lot of kids who go through I had not heard of depression in students, and when we had, and again, I'm not saying that it was a good thing or a bad thing, right? I'm just saying that the kind of parenting that we received was like, the moment you reason out with your dad, do chamat milega, you'll be absolutely all right for the next 1 year. You're sorted. No back answering. There is nothing. Okay, life is good. Life is very good. You're happy. Parent is also happy, but there's no depression.
There's no depression. There's no depression.
Today you can't, right? Because kids, they get depressed.
I think you need to just slap them.
Yeah, I mean, today's kids get depressed, and it's also because of our own parenting, right? Because we have also given them so much. There is, everyone goes to a public school. To a private school. Even when you're bullied in a very
Soft way.
yeah, okay. You haven't gone to a YMCA hostel where you get stripped down. You are made to stand up on top of on a low almirah with all the flashlights around your testicles, and the entire 50 people, students, seniors. I have been through it, okay? And I think it changes you, right? Today's kids, they'll go through a depression, right? If something of that sort happens. And I truly have seen ragging, right? Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that I think those experiences somewhere, they kind of make you a little more.
It's the bad experiences that teach you the most. I've seen that. Like, it's not good or bad, but when there's bad things happening, only like at that time your most saddest times ever in your life have taught you the most. Like, because looking forward, you'll always say, "Ki, "Arey, I got bullied. That's why I'm here today. Like, that's why I'm like this." So when there is no exposure to challenges, it has created, I feel, uh, people that are not, they have the skills, like the hard skills, but they don't have the life skills. You can say the street smartness or
Yeah, the life skills is kind of slightly, I would say, lacking. And I see that now in teenagers today. I have a teenager at home, right? I mean, and I see that. And even the freshers whom I hire from campuses and all, they're a little too soft for life. They're a little soft for life, and taking off the feedback, constructive criticism. I mean, all of those things. I think it's a little hard for them to digest. But then again, the blame is not on them. It is on people like us who saw the good life, and then we basically made sure that, okay, because we went through so much of hardship, our kids should not go through. So we gave them so much that they've become soft now. So I think it's also about taking the blame. When you point a finger at somebody, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. So we should take the blame.
So, like, I want to talk back about your role as a VP of HR. How many employees that you take care of essentially at the company?
No, we are a 10,000 people company, Shrey. We have a pretty large HR team. We have more than 40 people, 40. You have different departments within the HR department. So you'll have one department that will take care of recruitment or talent acquisition. You'll have the other department that will take care of employee engagement, talent management. You'll have third that will take care of operations. You'll have fourth that will take care of business HR. So likewise, you have different layers within the HR, and each of these subdivisions within the HR will have their own teams. So there's never a dull day with so many people in the organization and with so many issues coming up every day.
Right. So what is your exact responsibility when you're overseeing all of this happening? What is it that you have to focus on?
So, my focus was to largely bring about a transformational change in the organization because we essentially are not a tech company, right? We are, or we are a records management company, which is a typical brick and mortar, sort of a company. And sometime in 2017, 2018, we created several situational startups with very heavy dependence on technology across each of these situational startups, which also meant that when we started hiring and staffing for all of these startups, there was a lot of tech related hiring and a lot of tech investment, a lot of tech talk that was happening. So in a sense, the organization had to transform itself from what it was to a digital tech organization. So right from changing the culture, the structure, looking at the people, looking at the kind of conversations which are happening in the organization, looking at the learning and development journey, looking at the processes, the policies, and how to kind of really make them more aligned, with the new set of people that are coming into the organization. That was the whole big transformational story that I had to drive, and it's been like almost 5 years now, and I think we have reached we've crossed some very significant journeys.
Okay.
Milestones in this transformational journey. That's essentially my role, to kind of oversee, overlook, and bring about that whole transformation in the organization. But apart from that, of course, what it also means is that you go down, roll up your sleeves, do the hard lifting, heavy lifting, be always close to the ground, understand what's going on, know your business properly. Otherwise, people will be able to fib, and you will not even know, right, whether something is being rightly spoken or not. So very important to know your matter, so that you could question, you can ask the right questions and all. So I stay very close to the ground, and it's that's essentially been my role. It's fun.
See, so you mentioned, like, during the transformation stage, you mentioned a lot of different concepts there. There's a quote which says, if you're focused on everything, you're focused on nothing. So in HR, it can get as complex as you want to make it. You can focus on diversity. One day you're focusing on, learning leadership development. One day you're focusing on something else. There's endless different things you could do. In theory, it works. In theory, it'll make everything better. But how do you make sure you stay focused, and how do you decide what kind of strategy you want to go forward and how you want to allocate resources there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So transformation is not change management. Now, there are two different things. Okay, bringing about a change and bringing about a transformation, very, very different. Any change that alters the DNA of the organization, that alters the culture, really is the transformation bit that I'm talking about. So when I look at transformation, I look at basically 5 pillars in an organization. One is the structure, the second is people, the third is process, the fourth is learning and development, and the fifth is culture. Okay, now these are the 5 aspects, or 5 pillars, or 5 tenets, whatever you may call it. Okay, when you tinker across these is when you'll bring about a transformation in an organization. Now the point is, how do you then and there, I mean, what do you do when you say structure? What structure, right? Any transformation across these 5 tenets, okay, will come in only when you start questioning the philosophy around the current in that tenet, right? Like, for example, when I say structure, right, the first question that you should ask is, what kind of structure would you want to build in the organization? What is existing in the organization? Isn't that working fine? How do we bring agility in the system? How do we shock proof our leadership? How do we bring about succession planning? How do we bring in more efficiencies in the system or in the structure? How do we get different businesses to talk to each other? And then, is the current structure really, answering all of this? If not, then let's look. Okay. So that's about structure, right? The second is about people, right? What kind of people would you want to hire in the organization from here onwards? Again, you're questioning the philosophy around the current, right? What kind of people would you want to hire? What kind of value propositions, would you want to build for your people? Hey, why do people come and join you? Right? What gets them excited? Have you ever asked them? When you sit for an interview, right, or when you sit to interview, right, a candidate, how many times have you asked that candidate, listen, I'm excited to hire you. Tell me, why are you excited? Right? What is so exciting about writer information that brings you here onto this platform today, right? So so what's the pull and push, right? Are there any pull, factors that allow candidates to come and look at us, or it's just that, okay, there's another job, another company, let me sit, let me see what they pay, right? So what kind of people, right? What kind of, career path are you showing to someone who would want to make a career in quality today, right? Will you be able to tell that quality person that, hey, the next 10 years, here is the path that I show you, right, at Writer Information? Or I'm a systems guy, I'm not a software guy, I'm a systems guy. Hey, Abhishek, what opportunities can I get as a systems guy at Writer Information? Sure, here is the next 15 years that I can show you, right? Being a systems guy. Hey, Abhishek, I'm not a systems guy, I'm a software guy, right? What kind of career options do I have once I decide to come into writer? Why not? Here is the next 15 years that you can look at, and the different milestones within 15 years that you can basically climb up to, right? Hey, Abhishek, I want to build something in customer support. Do you have something that I can look at as a career option at Writer Information? Sure. Here is the next 15 years. So, do you have a career path? Do you have career tracks, within, right? And we've been able to kind of then, build a lot of, career tracks. We have about 16 career tracks now. So you could be a quality guy, you could be a systems guy, you could be a software guy, you could be a customer support guy, you could be an HR person, you could be a finance guy, you could be a business excellence or a service excellence guy. Or you could be a business development guy, you could be a pre-sales guy, right? You have 16 career tracks. There is something for everyone over the next 10 to 15 years. So why look outside then, right? So that is something that, we were doing in the people space. On the policy and the process space, right? What kind of policies do we have? Are the policies largely market aligned? Do you know what kind of policies do other organizations have around leave, around attendance, around, let's say, anything else for that matter, right? Around travel, okay? And then have you compared our policy with, what the market? So are our policies market aligned, right? The second is, when you look at your policies, what's the philosophy when you design a policy? Do you want the policy to be more employer leaning or more employee leaning? What is it that you would like to do, right? So, I mean, all of these are things that will then allow you to say, all right, I think we need to change. We need to kind of bring about something different, right? When it comes to learning and development, do you have career conversations? Do managers have career conversations with their team members? Or do you only talk to your team members when you have an escalation? What kind of career conversations do you have with your team members, right? You know, what is the kind of... so there are a lot of times, and I keep saying this, right? You spend 8 hours at work. Of those 8 hours, you spend 7 hours and 55 minutes with your manager. You spend probably 5 minutes with your HR person. Yet when the person resigns, the manager very promptly says, go talk to the HR. Why? You know, 7 hours and 55 minutes, 90% of the time you spend with your manager. It's a manager who needs to don upon the hat of an HR person and be able to preempt whether you are a red, you're an amber or a green, right? What conversations are happening? How are you preempting? The second thing that I keep asking my stakeholders is, you know, all of this thing of training people is all hogwash, right? So,
What you're saying, training people?
I mean, you know, training, you know, all of these, you know, discussions about training and, you know, we should train people, all becomes a hogwash and lip service if you don't track utilization of an employee. For example, if I am 100% utilized at work, which means 8 hours I end up only working, right? And I don't have spare time. Where is the time for me to get trained? So when managers, you know, sponsor their people's training programs, on what basis do they sponsor? Because they don't have time, right? People don't have time to...
Or the energy if they're working full time.
Yeah. And then they'll say, okay, nahi, you know, Saturday ko inka training kar do. Kyun? Why should somebody get trained on a Saturday? Right? And which is the reason why utilization becomes a very important engagement metric. You know, this is a problem that I have with the HR folks also and with leaders also. When I ask them what is engagement according to you, the response that I get is, you know, fun activity, doing picnic, cutting cake. And I wonder that if HR really has boiled down to throwing parties and cutting cake, and if that can make me improve my metrics, then I'll end up doing only that. But it's not that, right? I mean, nobody stays in the organization because you cut a cake every day. Right? Okay, people stay because they are emotionally connected to the brand. They are emotionally connected to the work. How do you get that emotional connect? Through conversations, through building relationships. Building relationships does not happen when you cut cakes, right? It happens when you give the right career path, when you have career conversations, when you are ensuring that people are growing in their own space, in their own, you know, mental space, as well as in their own, you know, corporate space as well, giving them all those right opportunities. So the right metric for engagement, or one of the right metrics for engagement, is also to understand how utilized my people are. And I would say that if people are utilized for about 85-90% of their time, that's a very good metric. 10% of the time people should be Vela. Because only when you're Vela is when you have time, right? And when you have time is when you'll innovate. When you think about other things. And if you don't have even a minute to spare, what's the point in getting people to be trained? You will not get people to come for those training programs. They will give you some excuses. They will not want to come on a Saturday. Or, you know, somebody will basically nominate, but in the 11th hour, the managers will say, well, no, the guy has got a very, very important implementation and delivery. He will not be able to make it. You'll have a lot of no-shows. So utilization is important. Anything above 90%, you should definitely track them in terms of what's going on, right?
How do you track utilization though? Like, isn't that a subjective thing? Or is there a good way to
You
track
have a
it?
lot of tools now. You have a lot of measuring tools now, Shrey. I mean, to check utilization is not a problem.
No, I mean there is tools. Let's say how long your screen is open, but it's just the screen open. Like how do I know if that person is working or not?
True, true. So, clocking number of hours, putting 9 hours in timesheets is not utilization.
Okay.
But really understanding that a typical work or a task that is allocated to you, in how many hours can that genuinely get done, right? And if the total number of people working in that particular activity are X, so then, what is the fair time, right, of getting that task delivered per person? I think you have a lot of these mathematical statistical tools that are available today. A lot of companies have already figured it out. It's no great shake.
Yeah.
But I think that should happen. And the moment you start tracking that is when you will realize that, okay, there is. And some organizations are very proud of the fact that people don't have time, right? I mean, they say that, oh my God, my people are working 9 hours, man. Okay, we have no time. And I say that is such a lousy statement to make, that people don't have time. People should have time. People should have 10%. The most innovative companies have become innovative only because people had time to innovate.
They had time to think.
They have time to think. If you don't have time to think, then you are a sweatshop, right?
So okay, so that's the essentially policy pillar. So what's the fourth pillar that you mentioned?
Yeah. So I was talking about learning and development.
Okay, that's learning and development.
That was one. And then of course culture, right? I mean, culture is really about what kind of conversations would you like to have, right, with your people? What kind of conversations are customers having with you? Sometimes you become the customers. You become the customer that you service, right? So what kind of customers are you servicing? What kind of conversations are customers having with you? Because that gets cascaded down, right? What is again, the pull and pull factors. What are your employees talking about you today? How do you measure, your net promoter score, and what's coming out of your NPS today? I think those, catching the voice of your internal customer is important. Sometimes we often do all of these things, but all your findings get canned, and then nothing happens out of those.
Yeah.
Right? So it becomes more of a yearly checklist kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I think those, to kind of very diligently, work on those will help you change the culture of the organization. And also about having these conversations with the CEO and with the top folks, because culture, the culture is also cascaded top down. It's not bottom up, right? How people talk at the top is really what gets percolated down.
Yeah, that's it's like I'd seen a graph where initially it's the founder whose attitude gets transferred to the 5-6 people that they've started the company with. Then there's more employees. Then it kind of keeps getting diluted until then it reaches systems and processes. Then eventually the culture aspect kind of dies down. I'd seen that graph somewhere. So what do you have to say on that? Is it harder to enforce culture as the employee count goes up? The original attitude and culture of the founders that started it, for example.
No, see, I mean, your processes and your systems are going to kick in at some point in time, right? I mean, as you grow, you can't obviously end up, doing manual activity, because then, human errors are going to kick in. You will not always be on Excel. You will have to kind of really automate, digitize your processes. You will become more efficient. Again, the structure bit that I was talking about. How do you bring about agility in the system? How do you bring about, an optimized way of being efficient? getting things done. So those things will happen, right? The culture is the heart and soul of the organization, right? So, how many times have you walked inside a big, large organization, and when you have walked out of that organization, you would have said, "Aaj maza aa gaya, yaar, yahan pe baat karni."
Understood. Yeah.
Okay, they're so warm people, yeah. They are really very warm guys. And how many times has it happened that you've gone to a large organization again, completely digitized, automated, everything, right? And you've had a great conversation, but something in your gut tells you a little stiff upper lip, man. I mean, I don't know.
It's a bit soulless. There's no soul there.
Yeah, they were trying to flex something. I don't know. It kind of made me a little uncomfortable.
Okay. So is culture, does it boil down to the humanization of an organization?
Yeah, it is really that. Now I'll tell you, a great example of customer service culture, or how to kind of really be great to a customer. Okay, you have a food aggregator. I'll not name it. Okay, so I ordered something, and then I realized that it was being the whole delivery was taking about an hour or so, or maybe an hour and a half, or something like that, right? And I realized it in about 2 or 3 minutes that, yeah, that's like a lot of time, so let me cancel it. Okay, and I very promptly cancelled it. The cancellation policy states that if you don't cancel within 2 minutes, right, your money gets blocked.
Can't cancel it. No cancellation policies.
You can't then claim a refund, right? Now I was basically ordering something which was quite a lot in quantity, so I think it was an order worth about 2,500 rupees. Okay, and so I immediately, I cancelled it in about, I think, 3 minutes or 4 minutes, which was well outside the ambit of a refund. Okay, I must confess. Okay, but it wasn't like really after half an hour or so, right? It was like within 5 minutes I cancelled. Okay, and then it said that, well, you can't. Are you sure you want to cancel? I said, yes, I want to cancel. Are you sure you won't get a refund? Yeah. So anyway, so I did that. And then, of course, I got back to their customer service and I said that, listen, I understand I'm out of that refund zone, but hey, look at it. I mean, take a look at my past history. And I've never cancelled, dude. I mean, $2,500, I don't want to let go of that money. So can you do something? The guy said that, well, my standard operating procedure, my SOP states, was refund, aapko nahi milega. Okay, it's gone. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Okay, this is haven't you gone through terms and conditions? And I'm like, yes, I have. Okay, I am just making that conversation. Can you do something? No, we can't do anything. It's part of the refund. I mean, it's part of the SOP. You're not gonna get. Okay. Then, of course, now there's one more food aggregator, and I had a similar example, and that was about, I think, 800, 900 rupees, and I was ordering, and I realized that, oops, someone else is also ordered, so let me cancel it. Okay, cancel. They said, well, you may not get the refund. I said, cancel. Then I called them up. I said, listen, can you do something? The customer service guy said, you know what, we don't have a policy. I said, can you do something? I know you don't have a policy. Can you help me out? The guy took a look at my past history and he made a great, excellent conversation with me saying, hey, looks like you're a rock and roll guy. I see that I go back to a lot of your comments and I see, he said, wait, hold on, while I kind of solve your problem, let me make you listen to some good old 60s and 70s, right? And he put me on hold for 2 minutes, gave me the best of my music, okay? And then he comes back and says, listen, can I give you a credit voucher? Would that work? Okay. I said, okay, all right. But I'm saying he had empathy, right?
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference in the culture.
Yeah.
There's a difference in the culture, right? You have made a customer for life. So, I think that is something that, that is basically culture, right?
Yeah. So anybody that has made it till here has just gotten a glimpse of how complicated HR can be, and it's no easy feat. It's usually not mostly, like people just don't have an understanding of how complicated this stuff can get. It's clowned upon it. It's like people think सिर्फ party or cake के लिए, what you said earlier. It's a very gross oversimplification, but yeah.
I think HRs need to basically blame themselves for that.
Yeah, because it boils down to them not doing the job properly as well.
Yeah. And they've always been the yes sirs. I will do what my CEO is asking me to do. I will do what my manager is asking me to do.
Yeah.
I'll be the Dalai Lama. But then that's not what it is. The moment HR is a lot of financial metrics, right? It's a lot of numbers at play, and the moment you start talking numbers, moment you start talking utilization, moment you start talking direct cost, indirect cost, head count, your payroll cost, how it's moving on a month-on-month basis, the moment you start talking about seat utilization, the moment you start talking about what's your budget vis-a-vis, your actual hiring cost for a particular role, I mean, all of those then make you get the right seat on the table. Otherwise, you'll always be seen as that soft, department that's basically mollycoddling people.
Yeah.
Processing the salaries.
Processing salaries, and I mean, all of those things.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about culture, right? I mean, another great example. So I was taking a look at the leave data, right? In one of the companies that I was working for. And I was taking a look at the leave data, and I realized that, that company did not have the option of encashing leaves. Okay, sometimes what happens is that, okay, let me save all my leaves when I leave the organization. I can encash all that, right? I'll say, okay, I've got 60 leaves, or I've got 70 leaves, okay, and 70 into my whatever, my per day gross or per day basic, and so I get that as part of my settlement, and it's quite a handsome amount of money or whatever, right? So some people, I know that people, want to kind of encash those leaves. Now, this company that I was working for did not have the process or a policy around leave encashment. It was, like use it or lose it. But you could hold it until a particular threshold, okay? But you have to use it. Okay? Otherwise, you had to lose it. Okay? No encashment. Which means that there was no monetary benefit, okay, for people to hoard their leaves, right? Okay. And but when we took a look at the leave data, we realized that 70% of the organization was holding leave, which was to the tune of 50 and more, right? So 50 days of leave.
50.
50 days of leave was accumulated for 70% of the organization.
70%.
Which is an astounding figure, right? And the next question was, what do they do with these leave numbers? Because they're not taking leave, right?
Yeah.
And these leave numbers are not getting encashed. So what happens? These leave numbers automatically die a natural death because it's use it or lose it, right? And they're not using it. Okay. So why are they not taking leave? They're not taking leave because it was considered not good to take leave. Okay. So you start hoarding leave, right? Now that was a cultural problem in the organization. Now when you show all that data points, right, to the stakeholders, that's when you show a mirror. Let's see, what are you doing? You're basically discouraging people. Even if there's something important in a person's life, the person will hesitate to take leave because it's considered to be not good, and what will my manager think?
Yeah.
Right? And that's why they're hoarding leave.
Imagine if somebody took the 50-day leave.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like I've had a solid conversation with you. I'm gonna have to watch it 2 3 times again. I forgot to take notes. I usually do, but yeah, it was solid from you. I know you have a lot more to say, but we're running out of time.
No, sure, sure, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast with you, Shrey, and I think um, uh, you know it's always good to kind of have podcasts with industry folks to get perspectives. I was going through a couple of podcasts that you had shared earlier with me, and those were pretty nicely captured. So keep doing this, and I think let's kind of spread a lot of information and a lot of knowledge sharing with viewers. Always a thrill to be here.